All right, everybody. Hope you are doing well this hump day. Welcome to Mass Media Mastermind podcast. There's the live stream. Got a lot of stuff to cover tonight. I'm sure you're going to have some questions. So we're going to try to run through this because we've got a big list for you guys here that are looking to help promote, help to get your word out on what you're doing. And so one of the things I think we have done a great job, not just with our podcast, but with our business, and especially in the niche of distressed note investing, because that's what my podcast is about, the Note Close Show, and how we were able to go from really zero downloads to 100,000 downloads in our first year, and now surpassed over the 500,000 mark before our third year. It is doing a lot of these things, and the things we'll go through may not fit for your audience. It may not fit exactly. But I know that we did done enough of these items and seen them work, that I thought it was great to share it with you guys. Now, I did this actually very similar. I've tweaked this presentation just for the way we promote podcasts, but I did one a couple nights ago on how to promote your event, which has some similar things. But I've tweaked it. This is different points to it. I encourage you to ask questions at the end. But I think you're going to really enjoy some of the things that we go through with this, because I retweaked this presentation to be focused solely on podcasting, things that you guys can do out there, okay? So we own our niche. I mean, in my niche of note investing, distressed note investing, ours podcast is the 100 megawatt blowtorch that supports all over. I'll give you a funny example. There was a fellow podcaster that has a podcast in the notes. She went on vacation for a year, didn't do a show for a year, came back, was all excited about that she still had 15,000 downloads in a year. And I said, well, it's probably because people are seeing your show next to mine. And so that 15,000 is probably part. And she's like, you know what, you're probably right about that. But that's because we promote. And so, like, I've been teaching real estate investing and specifically since 2004 in notes, creative finance, stuff like that for quite a while in the mortgage industry. I started doing teleconferences, we'd have 100 people on a conference call and doing coaching starting in 2006. I did my first class, my own class and workshop in 2010. And I came up with it from speaking on stage. Somebody asked me to class. I said, okay, let's go do that. And we promoted that way. I've been doing webinars with GoToWebinar originally since 2011 and Zoom for the last 4 years. But I've had anywhere from 3 people to 700 people on a webinar, okay? I did my first online workshop back in 2015. I had 75 people the first time I did it. We've had it up to 300 at a workshop. And then we've also done some online conferences starting in 2016. And we've had anywhere in the last 4 years from 248 to 1,500 plus on a conference, doing a lot of these things of driving people to. Now, look, I get it. Education, people are like, well, those aren't a podcast, Scott Carson. I get it. But there's a lot of things that we do that will work and you can implement very easily for your podcast, your YouTube channel, and things like that all. And so because this is one of the things I get, like, I want to increase my numbers. I want to go from 1,500 downloads to 15,000. You got to do more. You can't do the bare minimum to get by. Now, you can do the least amount, record an episode, throw it up, and, record it, and they will come, have that whole mentality. But I'll tell you, it's not the cornfield in Iowa, okay? It's not the podcast of dreams. You're going to have to do some marketing. You're going to have to post some things. And if you're not doing this on a regular basis, hire somebody to do it for you. You could literally take what I'm going to go through tonight and give it to a virtual assistant to go out and create some things. Some of these things are one and done. Some of these things you do on a regular basis. Some of the things may not work for your niche. So just bear in mind, out of these 60 plus that I'm going to go through tonight, hey, make sure you take some notes and we'll go through it. And I encourage you to ask questions. I encourage you, if you want to schedule some time, if you're part of our mastermind, let me know. Glad to schedule some time and see which of these would work well for you. But I think what I'm going to go through is going to work well for a lot of you out there. But like I said, these are great ways to promote. If you're doing a webinar, like tonight, we use some of these to promote this. We promote the replays. If you're doing a live training or workshop, I know many of you use your podcast to drive in training or coaching clients. Some people are doing lunch and learns as a way to get started. That's a great thing to do as well with your audience, or live events. If you're doing a networking event, this may be a great way. One of the things that we're doing here next month with South by Southwest being in town is we're doing a podcasting networking event in Austin. We'll be using some of the stuff to promote that. Mini Summit, if you were part of the Mass Media Podcast Summit That was, I guess you could say, a 3-day summit, not really a mini summit, but some people are doing a 1-day mini summits and things like that. We've used this to promote not only being at an event or hosting an event, but also going to a conference and expo and having that taken care of. And of course, your podcast being the most important thing. All right. So let's get started. This will, we go an hour and a half on this. I'm fine with that tonight, but we'll probably get through this right about an hour and leave it up for some questions at the very end. So 60 ways. First thing you need anything these days is a website. Okay. And you could use lead pages, ClickFunnels, WordPress. WordPress is the preferred, but I use both WordPress and lead pages in with my podcast and business. Most of my stuff goes to WordPress. WeCloseNotes.com is my main website, so we have there. But also when we create many things, we use lead pages, and of course we use ClickFunnels. So you got to create something to give people a chance to go to. And by all means, quit sending people to iTunes or Stitcher. Put a podcast player on your website and send them to your website to listen. I get so much Google juice, and I want people coming to my website to see what else is going on. I see people like, oh yeah, you can go to Apple Tunes and download this there. I'm like, you just gave all your SEO away to Google, or away to Apple. Don't do that. They get enough. Send them to your website. Put a player on your website. Put something on there, because that needs to be your mothership. Your website needs to be your home base for your podcast. And I don't care if you do something simple, but put something up. And these are the 3 better things to do to start with. Okay, and they have a URL that sends them, makes it easy for them to go to. Okay, and I like using Zoom. You guys have been on my podcast. I think Zoom is a great tool to record. It's also got some great built-in features or add-ons to do with a little bit extra. If you want to pay for the extra fee, it's well worth it to be able to live stream to Facebook or live stream to YouTube. We're live streaming to Facebook right now. But one of the things that we've done in the past, and we got a little bit away from it, but we're going back to it, is if you're recording at the same time on a regular day, why don't you just go ahead and set it up as a regular webinar and you get a sneak peek. So like if you guys registered for this webinar tonight, you are able to attend. You'll get a notice that we have it every Wednesday night. And you can go in and tweak, hey, so-and-so's guest this week and so-and-so's guest this next week, a week out. So I think doing that, we've done live Q&A calls with our audience. Like, hey, here's a link. Come on, be a live Q&A as we record the episode. You could do a sneak peek to recordings. Hey, we've got a longer episode. The reason I like using the webinar, and here's the thing, you want to require people to register. I don't care if you're using Zoom or GoToWebinar, Webinar Jam, some sort. They all have a thing where you can register. You want people to register so that you see who the heck actually shows up. Because the people that show up, like you guys that are on live with me right now, you are worth your weight in gold to me because you show up. Now, there's a lot of people that watch the replays, and they're great as also. But anybody that shows up on a regular basis, hey, those are your screaming fans. Those are your cheerleaders. And those are people that you want to reward in some sort of fashion. Like last week, we had the main person not show up, so I rewarded those who were live online with me, and that worked out really well. And it turned into a really valuable coaching session last Wednesday night. So you host it, and don't be afraid to publish it. And beautiful thing, if you have people coming in and listening and watching, they'll add good Q&A, and they may add comments to it and be able to help you out whether you got a dud of a speaker. But plus, you can also share it straight to Facebook or YouTube if you want to. I think putting a Facebook event page, a promotion. Hey, you can go create an event. If you're going to, hey, we're doing a live event here, or we're doing, if you record every Wednesday night or every Wednesday sometime, hey, create an event page. Hey, we're doing a live recording, join in the fun here. And that'll help drive people in your local area or in your Facebook group or stuff like that to actually come to it. You can invite people to that event if it's a Zoom thing. Just put the link into the Zoom. An event page is free, whether you're doing live or pre-record, something like that. Hey, it's a great thing to promote it out and use the power of Facebook. Facebook groups. This is something that you should all be doing. Find out Facebook groups. There's like promote your podcast, 50K podcast. You'll have at least 50,000 downloads. There's literally like 40 different large Facebook groups that are focused on podcasting. Some will let you post. Others don't want you to do yourself promotion, or they'll let you post your links like, hey, let's connect on Twitter. Let's connect on Instagram, or share your most recent episode. So that's the thing that you want to do is join those groups. And I'm not saying spend hours on Facebook or waste of time, but spend it. Go on there, take a look. I've added sponsors. That way I've added guests on my show. I've gotten booked on other shows from just spending some time in those Facebook groups. Facebook groups. And it's a valuable thing that we do in marketing every week. LinkedIn event. Now, most of you that have some sort of to do with business or entrepreneurship or anything like that, or marketing, if you're going to do the same thing like a Facebook events page, you now can go on LinkedIn and create a free event post. And one of the things that we are doing here starting next month is we're bringing it down a little bit. We're kind of squeezing in the times where we recording once in the afternoon, once in the evenings. And so we're going to set that up as a regular scheduled event on LinkedIn on a weekly basis. Who do we have on this week? Who do we have on this week? Join in the fun. Come and listen to the pre-record. Okay? That's the first 5. Eventbrite. If you're doing it, and people are like, why would I use Eventbrite to promote my podcast? Same thing, because Eventbrite allows for you to set up a repeat thing. So if you record every Tuesday at 2 o'clock, set it up as an event. Hey, this is the going solo recording. We're going to record, we're going to have an episode with every person. Now, you don't necessarily have to go to Zoom. You could have it go to your Facebook page or whatever website you use to re-release the episode or do something like that. You can post this in multiple cities. I've done this in the past before. Like I have a webinar I do every Monday night called Note Night in America. And one of the things that I've done is I've gone out there and said, okay, I'm gonna pick my biggest cities where I see the people are coming, and you can find out who's following you and what cities or states they're in. I go to the biggest cities and I create an Eventbrite. It may be Note Closer Show Dallas, Note Closer Show San Antonio, Note Closer Show San Francisco. But I have it repeat. You can repeat 17 times at once. So I can set it up so it repeats every week. And it drives people to listen to my podcast. I'll get people that opt in. You'll see it doesn't cost anything. I just use a link to the Zoom. And it works out really well. And now they've added a new thing called online events that aren't just city specific. People will obviously get noticed of events that are local, but then there's also a whole other way to check for online events. So check it out. That's another free thing to post there for you. Okay. I think another great way to promote your post is if you've got clients or members, is to go and interview them. Why is that important? Because your current clients are going to share it. Your current clients end up becoming little testimonial episodes for your podcast. Especially like we did a big series where we're going through and interviewing a lot of our mastermind members last year. And we had like 20 episodes that were just mastermind members. And I interviewed them, talked about their past, what they were looking for. They weren't hour-long episodes. Sometimes they were 20-minute episodes. But that's a great thing. It becomes a bonus that they love. Oh my God, you want to interview me on your podcast? What am I going to talk about? No, just let's talk about your business, talk about your life. They become micro-influencers because you know what? They're glad to share that. They're glad to share like that's their own magic ego bait. And they're actually more likely to share the episode than a celebrity or a big name. And if they're sharing to their friends and families, they're your ideal client. Their friends and families may become ideal clients for you too, or listeners of your podcast too. Okay. A simple thing you guys have seen me do, if you're looking at my photo you see down in the bottom of Zoom, I put the Zoom name signature. There's other services you can use like Bottom Thirds or XSplit Broadcasters, another thing you use if you're using like OBS or something like that to record with video. But put your call to action. Juliet does that well with texting quiz to her phone number. You could set it up like easy texting. So it's an opt-in. If somebody texts notes, they get on my email distribution list, although I got to pay the bill today, I just realized. But they get into my database. Now I can send them a text message beforehand and communicate with them that way. So that's a great way to opt in to text messaging, but it's also a great way to promote it because now if they text it, you've got their information. Now as you have episodes available, you can send out, hey, check out the newest episode, or hey, check out the newest thing we're doing on the podcast. Always, 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 I think if you're going to be doing in these days, you need to add the video, especially if you're using Zoom already to record your audio. It doesn't take anything extra to use the video from Zoom. I don't edit the videos hardly unless it's a really major thing, but all I really do is I will record it, my podcast episode, and then I send the link to production company. But with the videos, I just send it to a VA on Fiverr, and for $10, he goes on there, takes the Zoom logo off. He puts my podcast logo. He puts my header and my footer on there that I had created on Fiverr. And then he sends that back to me. And then I upload that video to YouTube. I can also share it to Facebook. I can use repurpose.io to cut that video up, and we'll get to that later on. We did a previous episode on that with Hani a few weeks back, so check that out. But uploading to YouTube is so valuable. It's the second largest search engine. It's an easy way. Like literally, I have talked to people, and if your ideal client, here's the big thing: if your ideal client's over 40, or outside 35 to 65, use video because they watch it. And I've had 4 people tell me they're like, Scott, I love your podcast, but I never listen on Apple. What I do is when I get a link, and say I go to either Facebook or YouTube to watch the video. I'll listen to it rarely, but I like to watch the videos. If you have an older client base, and by older I mean 40 or over, that doesn't mean they're old, but they would rather watch videos, and they'll always, because only 26% of the population listen to podcasts. So you're eliminating 74% of your listener base. And the older your clientele is, the less likely they are listening to the podcast. So you need to use video and posting to YouTube. So you have YouTube and Google, both the 2 biggest search engines, working in your favor to share it. Okay. Share your video to Facebook as well. It's an important thing. Facebook will get people to watch it when they may not listen to iTunes. Okay. Now you can't necessarily trust Facebook's algorithms because they look at anything a 3-second view or great is like an interaction. Whereas YouTube, it's got to be on there for longer than 30 seconds to be a view. So I purposely, here's the thing about YouTube, on my video intro on that I have added to the front of my video, it's 32 seconds. So if they get through the whole the whole introduction of the intro of the podcast, they count as a true view. On Facebook, if it's just like 3 seconds, no matter it's not, but it's still a large following. The reason you post it to Facebook is then you can share it across different places. You can use Restream.io. And somebody asked me to go through that. We got some time at the end. We'll go through that. But Restream allows for me to upload a video there, and then I can program and schedule it to be released on Facebook, on my business page, on my personal page, on Periscope, and YouTube if I want. I can have it all go reshare it all 4 of those places at once. And then I also use a service called Live Leap, that if they recognize the video is going live in one of my Facebook pages or groups, they'll share it to 4 or 5 other groups instantly. So that helps out as well. I know that was a lot for that session, but great stuff for you guys to do. Another way to promote. I think one of the things that we're doing, and this just came to me, it's like, why haven't I done this sooner? And I actually stole this from Joe Fear and Matt Wolf from the Hustle and Flowchart podcast. They have literally a transcript of their 8 episodes each month they send out in a newsletter. I think it's great. I have way too many episodes to do that for other stuff. But one of the things you could do is if you put together, maybe create a podcast manual about your top shows. Maybe you take the transcriptions or the show notes and you create a manual for it that you give out to people. Maybe it's something that you give away at an event, so you take some with you. And it's something that you give away as a flyer or something like that. But that becomes some way to promote your podcast with your top 10 episodes or top 5 downloaded or top 10 episodes of 2019. So maybe something you email out people could read, maybe with clickable links. Top 10, your top 10 guests, top 10 nuggets. Create a podcast message because it's become something. Sometimes people like to take away something. All right. Regular emails to your audience. I know this should have been number 1, but sending an email out to your database once a week at least is important. I have found that when I send an email out Sunday night or Friday afternoon is not a very large open email, especially if it's after 3 o'clock, but that's why I try to get an email out by noon on Friday, sharing what's going on or the previous episodes that have been released that week so they have something to listen to. And they'll often, I see boosts up over the weekend, or if I send an email out Sunday night at 7 p.m., hey, what's coming up this week with links to those interviews, or hey, here's what happened last week. Make sure you check out the newest releases. But a regular email each week is important for you to do. The way to communicate. Email still works well. If you don't have a big email database, you can take, hopefully you're using some sort of CRM tool like MailChimp. MailChimp will allow you to create lists, and it'll give you an URL for an opt-in to that list. You can take the URL and say, hey, join my email list. Get on the No Close Show podcast email list here by opting in and going from there. I think your meeting tool, if you use a meeting tool like Calendly or Meet Me or something like that, it is a great way to help you promote. Why would it help you promote? Well, first and foremost, it helps you get all the information in one spot. I think asking questions like, upload their bio, link to their headshot, any social media they like, 2 or 3 pointers they want to talk about. That becomes something that you can use really easy as a quick preview, a promo. So it's all in one spot. You get their headshot. You could even send this to a VA that just gets a copy of your calendar link and meetings, and they can go in and create simple posts that can get reshared before the event to drive people listening to your audience. So this is something new that we've used Calendly for over a year. And if you've ever been on my podcast, we ask a couple specific questions. But it makes all your stuff easy in one spot when you go back to edit or promote. Hey, here's who's coming on this week. Why not? I love this tactic for marketing. So if we're going to be recording and I'm going to be on Zoom and I want people to come on, I can create custom individual lead gen links. Actually, let me share this with you because I want you guys to see this. So let me share. I'll come back to this. So let me share this. Where's the internet? So there's Facebook. Okay, share that. So if I go over to Zoom here, I love Zoom. So if you don't use it, sorry. But Zoom allows for me to create 20 unique individual trackable links. Okay, so like tonight, Mass Media Podcasters live stream. So I share this out of a variety of different places. So like if you go down here, invite attendees, yeah, this is the general link to get on. But then I also create different registration links for source tracking. So Podcast Business Journal, 2 clicks on that, but no registrants. LinkedIn, 11 clicks for tonight's thing, nobody registered. 196 from Facebook, 17 registrants, because I shared this one link across the different Facebook groups. Now I could even customize it because I got enough room. I can say Podcast Business Journal or We Close Notes, Send Text, whatever. I could go on there and create customizable up to 20 of these. But I have email, YouTube, Twitter. Obviously, email is a big one that we did. That Facebook's the second one, and then Meetup Groups is another one because I host I have a Meetup group, Send Text Podcasters, that is my main Meetup group for Wednesday night here. So, but you can do up to 20 of these. And as long as you use this link and post it there, if they click on it, you can see, hey, they clicked on it and they registered from that. So that's a great way to track where your best marketing is at. And you may not want to do this every time, but initially you may want to do this as you're growing your marketing to see where your biggest bang for your buck is. Maybe do it twice a year for a month where you're sharing and then go back. Okay, we did this well. Let's go back and do it again 6 months later. All right. So that's what I would do because it's worked out really well. Okay. YouTube videos, going back to YouTube videos. Besides just uploading to YouTube, you also want to make sure that you've got all your YouTube stuff is really tight. And by tight, I mean you want to have your description in there of something that's dominant with what your episode is. One of the things that I do that I like about Calendly is I have people put their short 300-word bio. So when I upload the YouTube video, I put a paragraph or two what we're going to talk about, and then I copy paste the bio from my Calendly into YouTube initially, because my blog is not ready yet for my transcription company. So I could put that in there immediately, but that has boosted my views and plays on YouTube. You also want to make sure you got end cards working in there, keywords or tags in there, description links too. TubeBuddy is a great plugin that you can use for Google Chrome that has helped me identify good keywords that rank high, that have boosted up the right people seeing the right videos. And another thing too, you could do short promo videos. We talked about this before. Sometimes we've done and had my guest stay on for 5 or 10 minutes later after we wrapped up, and we just did a short little Zoom. Hey, let's talk, man. It was a great episode. We're so excited about this episode. We got such and such join us. Boom. Tell us what are we going to share in this episode? And that's a great little extra video you can use and share that to YouTube and share that other places as well for you. Okay. Moving on here. YouTube also has started adding in community pages or community tabs in your profile. So like I've got 3,100, almost 3,200 subscribers on YouTube. I can go on there and post. It's like a post that goes out to all my subscribers. Hey, Scott's got a new video available, or here's a new podcast episode, or here's a happy Thanksgiving, or hey, when do you listen to your podcast episodes, is a poll that I ran on mine one time. So it allows me to communicate with all my subscribers. Now, it's a cool new feature. Not everybody has it from some of the things I said, but you've got some different ways that you could communicate, maybe call it something different on your YouTube page, but it's free. It's an extra way just to post. You might as well post a link to people. It's just an extra way, copy paste that link and see if people answer or respond. Here's the thing. We talked about transcriptions a few minutes ago. Now, if you use Zoom, it'll link up with Otter AI automatically if you want it to, and automatically transcribe up to 4 hours of video for you. You can use rev.com to be really good. You can use temi.com for 10 cents through next month, and then it bumps to 25 cents a minute. But take your episode and create a short blog, first couple paragraphs of what you're going to talk about, and post it to LinkedIn. Create a LinkedIn article with an image. That's helped us. We've seen that increase. We create a separate posting just for that article. It may not be the full blog because we want to make it a little bit different. We'll do about half the blog and say, okay, here, to listen to the rest of the episode, click here, or to watch the episode, click on the video to watch it. So we always put the link to the show on my website, not to Apple iTunes, link to the show on my website, and then a link to the video on YouTube to get them to go to, okay, if they want to watch the video. I'm very lucky. Podetize does this for me, but you want to create infographics for each speaker. This could be an infographic of the time frame. Like I use a YouTube thumbnail. I put the headshot of the person on there and their title big and try to increase this in. Podetize also creates infographics and images for each episode, and they're customizable. They also create ego bait. I think I got that later on in here, but it's a great way to make sure it looks fresh. Like I was on some of these podcasts today on their website, and their podcast website, their page didn't show anything different. It looked very like there was supposed to be a picture image, and it was just blank. And I was like, if you added a little bit, just even a headshot of somebody on there would be good. But infographics, you can take that info and then, of course, share it across all the different platforms available. Now, just started doing this, but I've seen some other podcasters use Reddit to promote their podcast, where they get on these different niches or discussions in Reddit, and they're answering questions and communicating. And then, oh, hey, I shared that on a recent podcast episode I just did. Here's the link to that episode. And it's a great way to share that there. Always, if you got infographics we talked about before, posting on social media, releasing the episodes and tagging them, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest. Pretty easy to do. We talked about ego bait images with the quotes from the guests. That's kind of the infographics I talked about earlier. I'm lucky Podetize does this, then they just have a Dropbox file folder. They drop these all in, so I can go and pull those when an episode comes out and share that across different social media platforms. And even set it up in Buffer where it automatically reposts on a regular basis. I don't think I cover Buffer in here, but it's still a thing you need to use. So you can upload one thing and then share it across things. So I haven't updated my Buffer account since Mass Media Podcast Summit, but one of the things I did is by the Wednesday night before that, I had all the posts for Friday, Saturday, Sunday ready to rock and roll, because I created infographics for each speaker and a short description of what they're doing. I also went over to Zoom and created a special tracking link for their discussion. And then that went out on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn 30 minutes before they actually spoke live. And we saw quite a few opt-ins from that, from just sharing out there with the ego bait or the infographics. So imaging is important. This is just not an audio side of the podcast. It's all about attracting eyes and earballs as well. So that's one of the things that you can do. Now, I know we're covering a lot of stuff. Some of you are like already blown away. You're like, oh my God, we're only through a third of this. You're not going to do all these at once, okay? Some of the things are very easy. You create once and you share it 3 or 4 of these things. But these are different things that you can do. Like you can set up Eventbrite once and it's done for 8 months a lot of times, okay? My marketing mind. Meetup groups. I love Meetup groups. We've started going back into and targeting Meetup groups on meetup.com. I join those groups if they're in a niche in a city that we have a following in. A lot of them will have message boards, discussion forums on specific topics, or even sometimes advertise their full mailing list, the email that you used to send out to their full mailing list. So that's a great way to add people to your database by either posting there or sharing, hey, I've got a new episode on this. This is what this niche is about. There's so many Meetup groups out there. Some of them have big followings too. I think I made a list of the top 30 real estate investment clubs in the top 30 cities across the country that we have a following in. And it came to over 100,000 people were part of those 30 groups. Now, you'd only post to a mailing list for one of those groups, the 3 and 24-hour period. but that would be 90 groups I could post to in a 30-day period, at least get an episode out or talk about the podcast at least once, and it works out really well. So why wouldn't you want to do that? Meetup's free. Now you want to make sure you try to add value. If you're trying to spam things, they'll kick you out. Sometimes the guys that run the guys or gals that run the Meetup groups won't approve your post, and so you just run that. But hey, message boards and discussion forums are usually the two most open things. Mailing lists are about half the time. But why? Find out a group in your area, on your niche, start locally, and then grow from there. We talked about this beforehand. Sorry, I may have covered a short 5 to 10 minute preview interview with speakers, post to social media with link to the full episode. This could be the teaser videos. You've seen this done as well. You can use snippets, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minute stuff, and post it all over the place as well. I like attracting vendors in your field and interview them. Now, if you have vendors that you use, I reach out to my vendors. Hey, can I interview you? Can I have you on my podcast? Like, what? Yeah, I'll be on your podcast. Because you know what they're going to do? They're probably going to share that episode to their list of clients. Say, hey, I'll have you. I'd love to have you on, but can you send an email blast out with the interview links for it when it's done? And most of them are like, yeah, I'll be glad to. All right. Or they'll post it to their website. Yay. So if you got some vendors that you use on a regular basis, reach out to them. Ask them to come on your podcast. It's a nice switch up. It shows also value of your vendors. If they offer an affiliate relationship of some sort, it's a great way to market them and say, hey, use Quest Trust Company to open your IRA. Tell them that Scott sent you, and maybe they'll throw you a kickback or something like that. But identify vendors in your field and interview them, because they have clients. They have people that your ideal listeners probably of some sort of fall in some sort of category that you're going to like. Why not reach out? Because they're an influencer in their circle, and they're more likely to share it. And that's going to be a great way to really get some great listeners to your show. Same thing. If there are other speakers that are in your niche, mastermind groups, or other memberships that fall in line with what you're doing, hey, maybe you bring on those people. Maybe you bring on, like we had Patrick Precourt on last week or 2 weeks ago now. He's a buddy that used to be, he's got a mastermind he does for speaking. So he was on, he's going to share that link to his membership. Well, his clients are probably good ideal clients and listeners for my show and what we do. So it's a true win-win. And why wouldn't you want a win-win? So that's the thing. Look, think about who your influencers are. Ask them on. I'm not talking like celebrities, but somebody come on, hey, I'd love to have you come on, speak. Would you mind sharing to your audience? And go from there. Okay? If they've got a group of people, they're your ideal listeners. You can also do this. You can do a Facebook Live video in different groups out there, a tidbit or talking about it. Hey, guys, I just recorded this great episode with Tony Robbins on my podcast. I'm blown away. Can't wait for it to come out. Go ahead and just subscribe to my podcast, and you'll be alerted when it comes out. But he dropped so many nuggets. Or like Bob LaChance, man, you would not believe. I just had ex-NHL hockey player Bob LaChance, who runs Gleam Global, talk about the 4 R's of virtual assistants, how do the roles, responsibilities, requirements, and results work out for you, and if you're hiring a VA. So check it out. The link is coming, okay? Something I've done in the past. I need to get back and doing a little bit better, but it's worked. It's not a play I run every day, and you want to make sure that the group that you're posting to will allow that, okay? Post to different LinkedIn groups. If you got any sort of business and entrepreneurship or aspect of things, there are so many large LinkedIn groups. And so I realized I had not done this, and I went and did this about 2 weeks ago. Started posting some of the bigger LinkedIn groups and note investing, distressed debt, stuff that falls in my niche. And I saw an uptick of people that liked that post. So I went and followed them on LinkedIn. They followed me back, but they also listened. And I was pretty excited about that because they commented. You could also do Instagram, short little mini 15-minute mini summits on, as our buddy Adam Scheibel will tell you. Adam's got this. If you go back and listen to the first Wednesday night Podcasters live stream video that's in the playlist on YouTube, he shares a strategy where he does an hour time slot. He brings on 3 people, max of 15 minutes each, one at a time. And you make sure they have an Instagram following so that when they go live, the guests he has on their subscribers or followers on Instagram see that he's going live. We'll jump over and helps drive traffic. It's helped them with his Casting the Pod and the Million Pound Mention podcast as that well. It's a great way to promote. Maybe you just have one person on. Maybe you don't need to do a mini summit. Maybe just do one for 30 minutes and you're just doing a discussion that way. Okay. One thing that I've done too is if I'm doing a solo podcast, or just me talking, a lot of times I'll pull my phone up here and go live on Instagram at the same time I'm going live on Zoom as well too. You've heard me talk about Octopus CRM, where we use this to get booked on other podcasts. Another thing that you can do, and I've started doing this and started seeing some good stuff, is I identify my ideal listeners. And like with me, my ideal listeners would be like real estate investors or note investors. So I've started doing 100, 150 connections to then say, hey, I'd love to connect with you. I got a podcast I think you might enjoy listening to. And here's a link to the podcast. All right. I love Octopus CRM. There's so many tools for you. Send that. Imagine if you send this to 100 to 150 new people at a day, and half of them either followed you on LinkedIn, so that if you're posting on LinkedIn, they see your stuff later, or they even checked out one episode. That's extra. It's one person more listening to your show. I do 100 in the morning, and then I'll do 50 in the afternoon, like at 5 o'clock or 4:30. I see really good activity at 4:30. So that's another thing. I may go back in and do 50 in the morning, and then just do 100 in the afternoon. But it boosts connection and traffic to my profile on LinkedIn, and then you often will see other things. Okay. You can use lead views, also pull a list of ideal clients, ideal vendors, ideal people on lead views. That's a little bit more expensive. $99 a month will give you 500 leads. You can export that lead list and upload it to Octopus, or you can export it if they've got their Twitter handles or their Facebook profiles. You can go connect with them on there as well. LinkedIn Sales Navigator, I talked about this. You get some sort of business entrepreneurship in LinkedIn. Maybe use Sales Navigator to talk to people. Maybe not only to get people to be on your podcast or be guests on the people podcast, but the same thing, using it to spread the word on what you're doing. Halfway there, everybody. Halfway there. Okay. Association list. If you're a member, I'll give you an example. Like I've got a buddy, Stacy Rossetti, who's out of Atlanta. She's starting a self-storage podcast. Well, she's like, how do I, promote it? She's got a database that pretty well. I said, well, why don't you reach out to association lists in your self-storage associations and just, either join up for that. And a lot of times they'll give you the email list, or you buy the email list and send an email out to them as well. And she's like, oh my God, that's golden. Our buddy, Gabriel Lucy, he is the Let's Play Through podcast. He also does the private member podcast for like golf clubs and tennis clubs. And so what he did, he went out and found a list for associations and send an email, and then also a direct mentor say, hey, I have this podcast. He may not have the biggest download numbers, but it's a very loyal number as well too. So there's different associations that you would fit into, your podcast would fit into of some sort. Hey, join it or go find it. Sometimes they'll just advertise the list straight on their website. Here's another thing. Look at the different conventions that you would attend. You don't necessarily have to buy a ticket to them, but look at what you attend. So here's the thing, like Traffic and Conversion Summit is a big podcasting summit, marketing summit that takes place in San Diego. We've got PodFest coming up. Most of the people that run different conventions will list their vendors on their website. So maybe that's an ideal spot for you to reach out to for future sponsors, but going to the websites and pulling that list can be an easy way for you to find some guests or potential sponsors for your own podcast that falls in line with what you're doing. Like some of these conventions have hundreds of sponsors. Well, you only need one or two to make it worth your while. So that may be something that you reach out to, say, hey, I think you might be an ideal fit. Your audience is our audience. It might be an ideal fit for you to advertise or sponsor or come on an episode and see what kind of hits you get off of it. Same thing, you want your guests, if they could, be glad to do an email blast out to their audience about your show. It's great. What you often have to do with these, though, you need to pre-write these for them. You need to give them links and even give images of the ego bait. So I'm lucky that Podetize sends an email out with the links and the ego bait in a quote or two. But you may want to say, hey, do you mind sending an email out to your database about this episode? And I'll do the same thing for you as well. Okay. You may want to pay to sponsor or speak at other speaker events that are falling in line with your niche. Sometimes it's maybe it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Maybe it's a offer to be a panel instructor at an event, or I'll give you an example. Like a lot of people will submit things like to South by Southwest to have a speaker panel. That would be something you could do. Or hey, go and offer to be a media sponsor for an event. And we've worked this out. I even created a media pass card that I give. That when there's a couple conventions or big events going on, say, hey, do you need a media sponsor? I'd love to. I have a podcast in your niche. I'd love to come out, interview some of the people, and that could be a great way to get word out what you're doing as well too. All right. You can talk about this during webinars. You can do about workshops. And if you've got a big database, even reach out and say, hey, I'd love to have you come on and talk about your event. I'm doing this for a buddy of mine. He puts on an event in Las Vegas here in April, and we're going to have him on in March. Just to talk about the event. Now I'm sharing to my audience, but he's going to turn around and share it to his audience. He's like, I'm going to promote the heck out of you. So I'm looking forward to that. If you've got a local podcast, you may want to check out the local BNI groups, Business Networkers International. It's a local business, local entrepreneurship. You can often attend. You just usually pay 15 or 20 bucks for breakfast or lunch. But that's a great way to find 30 to 70 people or more at one event that may be interested in what you're doing. All right. So, and that's a great way to network with local people in your audience. All right. That goes on to networking in different live networking groups or real estate clubs or other clubs that may fall in line with what you're doing. If you run a publishing podcast, look for other authors or publishing. Maybe you go to a network, take some business cards, take a flyer. Sometimes, there's times I speak pretty regularly across the country, different real estate investment clubs. And so sometimes I'll sponsor on a regular basis to have a booth at it. And I'll just go and advertise the podcast. And a lot of times they'll give me some sort of, I'll give you example. There's been a big investment networking event taking place in Dallas and San Antonio. And I'll pay to be a booth sponsor. For $300 or $500, I'll have a booth. I'll pull a couple banners out with my logo, have some flyers, some swag. And part of the thing that I negotiate is they give me the list of anywhere from 300 to 900 signups for the event, and then I'll just send an email, hey, here's what I do, and it always works well. Chamber of Commerce networking, great place to go to. Hey, pull an inch of everybody that falls in line with what you're doing and seeing who would be a good fit. The Chamber of Commerce often know a lot of people or vendors, other people, organizations out there that can be a great spot for you guys to go there as well. Local small business administration offices, if you're in business as well, will often have people that may be listeners, or you may be like our buddy Jim Beach. He focuses on the SBA there in Atlanta. He's gotten awards for being a small business administration podcast, and that helps with a lot of things. So that would be something that I'm taking straight from Jim, and we're doing some things like that. This kind of comes back to old school 39. And I found this from just walk around. You go to Starbucks, they have usually a cork board. You go to Panera, they have a community event board. You go to Juice Lane, where I go at lunch, they have a community flyer board. Maybe you want to create some flyers, some nice color ones, get them printed up at FedEx or Office or Vista Print or something like that. And then, hey, maybe go out and say, hey, a local podcast, your local podcast. Most of those grocery stores will often have one. Sometimes if you've got local offices that fall in line, maybe your office, your vendors, you can leave some flyers at your office. They'll pass out to their clients. Maybe you provide, your podcast provides a service like David. He works with Going Solo as his podcast. And so one of the things he does is outplacement services for people in their more seasoned years, a little bit, I guess you'd say, helping them get outsourced placement or something like that. So creating some flyers that they can actually put in those pamphlets that they hand out to the newly unemployed. That'd be a great place to put it. Community clubs. If you're in an apartment complex, maybe you want to go post there. Or if you're doing something for senior and there's a senior center, like north of here there's Del Webb Sun City. If I was doing a podcast like my buddy John Largent with Senior Care FM, I would tell him, listen, it's worth you driving up there and leaving a flyer there or passing it out there. See if you can pass it out that, hey, it's a podcast on senior care. It falls right in line with what you're doing at the clubhouse there in Del Webb or something like that. Okay. I know every city still has penny savers ads or those newspapers or those, the postlets that they mail out where you get all the coupons. You may want to look at advertising in there as a flyer. Hey, listen to the Note Closer show or listen to the Marvel podcast, whatever, something like that falls in line. Can be a relatively cheap way to still get your eyes in front of a lot of people, because still a lot of people still read and will pick up those things. I found out by doing that one of my local free newspapers has the best of And so I have a podcast, and they're being sponsored for the Best of Austin podcasters. Okay. Direct mail, postcards, you can do that as well. You can use like Vista Print to give you a run of like 50. If you're gonna use more for postcards, Postcard Mania is a great company out of Jacksonville, Florida. If you tell them Scott Carson, essentially, they'll give you $50 off your first order, and I get a $25 credit. But they create really great postcards that you can use in direct mail. Maybe you get people in, maybe you send a thank you card to your guests, or you send people that leave opt into your website, you send them a thank you. Hey, thanks for listening. Who wouldn't love a personal postcard yet? You can buy lists. Maybe you need to do a direct mail blast out to people if you got a local community. Great, you could do that. There's a service called Exact Data or Melissa Data that we use to buy lists that give us mailing addresses, emails, and phone numbers a chunk of the time. But we always give the names, emails, and addresses, so it gives us a couple ways that we can use. Sometimes your speakers or people that you have on have a page or a following or a group that they're part of. Maybe they'll let you come in there. Hey, do you mind if I post this to your group? Do you mind if I join your group to promote this? And they're like, oh, yeah, sure. You're going to promote me to my own group? Yeah, let's do that. Well, you're really promoting your podcast. But it's a giver's game, okay? We talked about conferences and events. It's a little bit different. If there's like a bigger conference or different events, like there's a event going on in Houston Friday and Saturday that I'm driving out to tomorrow called the Spark Christian Podcasters Conference. Now, depending on who you talk to, some people say, yes, Scott is a Christian. Or oh, he's a devil. Who knows? But I'm going out just to network with the 150 other podcasters who are going to be there. And I'm just taking some flyers. I'm taking some cards, some swag as a way to promote my podcast and network with other people. There are also, if you do something, like I'll give you an example, Stephanie, my badass significant other, my right arm, one I could not live in this world without her. She does such an amazing job for me. She has kind of a new podcast that she's been dabbling with called the Fur Babies Podcast. And so there's an event she goes to here in Austin. There's another one in Houston, San Diego, and they just had Chicago. It's a thing called Popcats. It's basically a 2-day conference dedicated all things cats. And it's ideal for her Fur Babies podcast. So what we did is I reached out to Popcats, found that they have availability just to have a table there, like a booth for $300. And I reached out and said, hey, do you mind if we come in and buy a booth as a podcast? And if we interview some of the people that are there as a way to promote, they're like, oh my, what do you promote whatever you want? So they'll have somewhere between 10,000 people go through that door on a daily basis. Well, you better believe we're going to be interviewing people there and then having the podcast, join us. We're launching it that weekend. And that's one of the great things. Who wouldn't want to add like 5,000 or 2,000 people to a mailing list from doing an event that's there locally? There's small business expos that have a lot of things. Each city, there's a small business expos that run all over the town, all over the place. Sometimes it's pretty cheap to give a booth there. It's a great way to add people to your database if you can. Like I said, sponsorship, booth. I literally am sponsoring the Mass Media Mastermind. My mastermind is sponsoring the Spark Christian Podcast Awards they're doing. So I paid to sponsor. I'm not having a booth. I just want to be out there networking. Hey, we're sponsoring the awards. It becomes a cool thing that we're going to use for marketing for later on. Start a networking group of your own. I started a group on Facebook for people that I've had on my podcast, people I've been on their podcast, friends of mine that have a podcast. It's called the Scott Carson Podcast Guest and Guest Host page. I think there's like 195 people in there. But it's a great way to promote my podcast because I've used it for people to have me on their show or I have them on their show. I've promoted them, say, hey, you need to have this person on your podcast. They're great. And that person, when they see me helping them promote them, they usually think of me when they come across it. So I got a thing like Juliet Clark. She's referred me to a couple places. Aaron Young. Thank you guys. I've shared what I do, and then, hey, you'd be a great guest for this episode or this podcast as well, too. And so it's a really good win. Okay. But that's free to do. It doesn't cost anything to start a Facebook group or a networking group here locally, wherever you're at, of guests or the shows, or other ways to promote each other. Number one, one thing that's helped us more than anything else is being a guest on other people's podcasts or similar podcasts. I was over 105 last year. We're on pace to do that again this year. Every time we're on a podcast episode, I see a boost in downloads to to our podcast. Because if I'm on somebody else's podcast, they're usually the right audience. Their audience, a portion will go over and check out my podcast as well. You can also, I've seen a trend of this happening lately, sponsoring podcast ads on similar niche podcasts. So I was just on Podcorn yesterday, and I saw at least probably 10 to 15 podcasts that they're looking to sponsor other people's podcasts by giving a 30 to 45-second shout out or being a guest on. They're willing to pay to be a guest on other people's podcast, as long as it falls in line with what their message. I just like, this is brilliant. Or you could do this to boost your sponsors. If you don't say, hey, reach out to somebody you're friends with who has a podcast that falls in line with your audience. Say, hey, let me pay you $500 to sponsor your podcast, and then you pay me $500 to sponsor our podcast. I know it sounds a little cheesy, but now you can legally say, oh, here's who sponsored our podcasts, as a great way to attract other sponsors. Because sometimes sponsors will want to say, hey, who else has sponsored your show? And that'd be a great way to do that. But sometimes sponsoring an episode. Doug Sandler, DJ Doug, does one with the Nice Guys in Business podcast. If you're a guest on his show, that's great, but they also offer up an opportunity for you to pay a little bit extra to have the extra boost email out to their database, extra social media posts, and it's well worth the $300 that's worth for. So that may be something to look at doing, sponsoring other people's podcasts or offering sponsorships up for your stuff. Local magazines, news articles. Like I started writing in Podcast Business Journal the end of last year. One article, 800 words a week. I started seeing people that have commented and started following me a little bit, start listening to what we do, because we provide content on a pretty regular basis, and it's worked out. It's not a big thing. I write 2 or 3 weeks of articles in advance and then send it over to them. But the nice thing too is some of these online magazines, when we do events or we do something, I'll say, hey, would you like to be a sponsor on my podcast or my event? I know you may have a tight budget. How about we just do an ad swap? And so this has worked well for us on a couple of things. We let somebody say be a sponsor in ours, but they don't pay us. What they do is they give us advertising space. So we'll create infographics with links to our website, links to our offerings on their website. So like I've done this for a few, and it's actually worked out pretty well. It's a really good beneficial relationship of people sharing across back and forth. Okay. News, journal, events pages. A lot of times these magazines or articles will have an online events page that you can go post things to. You know, like Podcast Business Journal, if you're doing an event, you can go on there and post there. A lot of them will have upcoming events or a community events page, things like that. Like the different business journals always have an events page that you can go post to as well. We talked about event thumbnails on other websites. Briefly, that's what I meant by that. You may find other websites will allow you to promote. They're looking for people to put stuff into that. Just got to ask a lot of times. Okay. Pages of magazines, newsletters. Sometimes magazines, you have a lot of people doing online magazines. There's stuff like with Podcast Business Journal, Podcast Journal, Steve Olsher's doing. My buddy Donnie Bovin he's got another online thing. He's looking for some advertising sometimes, people that buy an ad. There are also sometimes I've reached out to different magazines in my area, in my niche. Say, hey, if you ever need an article written on distressed note investing or an article written on this, I'd be glad to contribute an article. And so that's worked out really well for me, where they give me like a full page or 2 pages to do an article, where it would normally cost like $2,000 to $5,000 in advertising costs for that. So I write a good article and say, hey, here's a link back to me or how to get a hold of me. That becomes a gold mine of people watching or reading it, and then I save it, and it becomes a great direct mail piece or something I can use in the media, in REI Inc. magazine, Scott Carson. Okay. Like just recently, Steve Olsher was looking for Podcast magazine. He had a spot of In Your Ears, and he posted on his profile, hey, I've got a spot in your ears. Give me the most creative thing that you do if you go on to get it. I'm like, I'll be glad to do that. I said, I'll share it out there. I'll create an infographic or a postcard out of it. And so I've taken the page, my article, my little mini article, picture of the podcast magazine. That's a thing that I'm using to promote out on social media and at events that I go to. Press releases, you could do this as well. I wouldn't necessarily do this on a regular basis unless it's around a major event and your podcast falls in line with this, like a major event. Like when we hit a big milestone of 500 episodes, we did a press release. When we were talking about, we closed on a major deal. We did a press release about that. And so we talked about in the podcast. So press releases, you can get them at like e-releases or pretty inexpensive. Newswire.com is another place. There's a bunch of places that do press releases for you and look at them. Some are, you offer the cheaper route is international news. You probably want to find something domestic, obviously, if you're promoting a podcast. So that may be something to think about. Like I'll give you an example. If you see, let's say theoretical, like I'll give you an example. Let's say that ConocoPhillips is laying off a lot of their staff in the Houston market. Well, those would be great people. You may want to do a press release and say, hey, local podcaster is helping people transition. And you use that, hey, with all the layoffs from ConocoPhillips, this could be something that you may want to check out, Cast the Pod, like Anthony Freshnicki, who has the Plant Problems podcast. You may want to do a release about your podcast around marijuana being legalized in different states and say, hey, here's a great episode to talk about this. Or if you're wanting to be a marijuana or cannabis investor, here's an opportunity. Here's a podcast that goes through all this. So that might be a great thing for you to use press releases because that's kind of a hot button. Okay. Craigslist Events ad. I know this sounds stupid, but Craigslist Events. If you're doing an event, hey, I'm doing a live recording with Tony Robbins. You can register for it for free here. Or got a big time guest. Share it to Craigslist. You never know what the heck's going to happen in your city or in other cities too. We talked about this briefly. You can purchase email lists and reach out to these companies like Exact Data, Melissa Data. Tell them what kind of avatar you're looking for. We'll buy lists of IRA investors and people that have 401ks, and we buy them in bulk. I mean, in specific counties, even sometimes down to specific zip codes. And for 6 cents a lead, I can buy 16,000 names that I can market out to. Pretty stinking cool. And we upload those in a variety of things. But anyway, usually I'm paying $1,000 at least for a list. Is usually what the minimum order is. But it becomes effective because then I can upload that list to Facebook and market to them via a custom audience. I can take 2,000 at a time and upload them to LinkedIn and go out and connect with those people and market to them there. Or I can just do a slow and steady email list, blast out to them if I want to as well. Facebook and Instagram geo-targeting. If you're if you have an event or your podcast is like local, you may want to market to people in just your city. If it's like traffic and conversion summit that's taking place in San Diego, I'll be 10,000 people at it. Well, be able to market on Facebook and Instagram by identifying a location and marketing to everybody within a 1 to 5 mile radius around that location who have these interests, who are traveling to this area, and have these interests that fall in line with it, and be able to target those people directly. So we're pretty excited about that. And hey, you check out the podcast or check out this. Okay, this is pretty cheap and easy. It beats paying like $1,000 for the ticket when I'll just spend $60 and do $20 a day and get people to go to my Instagram for my podcast or target them to my website to listen to the show. Okay. You can always pay for Facebook ads and Instagram ads to market to your show if you want to do. That's fine. You can test market if you've got a big episode you want to drive people to, or messing around with this a little bit to see what it is. I keep it cheap. Yeah, I wouldn't spend more than $1 to $2 a day initially just to start it off, and you can run that on a regular basis. Once you find something that's worked, you can set it up on a $1 a day for a year, $365, getting people coming to your Facebook page for your podcast or going directly to your podcast and website. Here's the thing to help promote your podcast. And I got this from Denise Walsh with the Dreamcast podcast. And she did this to get a lot of good reviews on her podcast initially. She ran different contests to give away books and other things. And she basically said, I really look, if you write a review, I'll pick the best review. And she did this on a regular basis. And she did it for 2 weeks, and she got over 150 reviews on her podcast. And so she shouted out the reviews as they came through. This is something I need to get better at. But what I have also done to promote my show is I have taken screenshot images of my reviews and turned those into Instagram posts, Facebook posts. I took like 100 reviews and made a little short video that went from one post, one review to another one, to another one, to another one. And that was a really great video that got people like, oh, they're saying some good stuff about this podcast. I need to watch this podcast. I'm using it for shout outs. But that was a really great thing that she did. She ran a contest for 2 weeks, gave away several books, and gave away some coaching as well, too, to help drive in some traffic to her shout out. So she just made sure and mentioned that during her podcast episodes, and at the end, she ran a short 30 to 45-minute ad in her first few episodes to drive that. And then she promoted that across her social media channels. So Denise did a really great job with that. You should check it out. Almost in the final stretch. Sorry, I got ahead of myself, but like I said, create an image or infographics promoting reviews and posting that. You can tag people if you know their name. This really becomes free social media posts, because a lot of times these people, if they share this, is an easy way just to do a screenshot from your smartphone and share it. I take it a little bit step further. I send the reviews and have a VA put it into go into Canva, and they create a custom Instagram post that's 600 by 600 pixels, and they use their color coordinating and put my logo in the bottom corner, so it looks really nice. Ask for referrals to other shows, to other guests. Hey, who do you know? Who have you been on recently? If you don't know of shows that are out there, obviously searching. One of the things that I did, one of my guests that I had on, a guy that reached out to me, Damian Lupo, I remember this. He came out and said, hey, I'd love to be a guest on your podcast. And I asked what he talked about. He goes, well, hey, here's a place that I've been on all these other podcasts. So I'm like, so he pulled up his website. I went to his website, and he had literally like 100 people he'd been on podcasts. It's like, oh my God, I would be great guests on all those shows. Okay. So it was the same thing. I asked him, hey, Damien, would you mind being a referral to some of the people you've been on? And I'll refer you to other people that I have in mind. And it worked out really well. So something to think about. As I always tell people, like, listen, if you go to my media page, you'll see that now. On WeCloseNotes.com, on the media page, you'll see all the podcast guests. It's lacking. I need to add about another 30 on there. We're getting links as they get published, but those all become great referral sources for you. And so if you're watching and you think it'd be great stuff, hey, go to my media page. If you need an introduction, I'm glad to do an introduction. 58 and 59 kind of go hand in hand here. You can go to Instagram or Twitter and look for keywords. Hashtag real estate investing, hashtag note investing, hashtag real estate podcast, hashtag publishing podcast, hashtag senior care, whatever it is, hashtag cannabis cast. Oh, that's a good one. But see who's using those keywords, and then I reach out directly to them. Say, hey, thanks. And I follow some of those keywords on Instagram and say, oh, hey, I saw that your article on this and you're interested in this. Hey, maybe you want to check out my podcast. And that's an easy thing to kind of copy paste in your notepad that you can send a direct message on Instagram. Hey, see that we have some similar things in common. Thought you might be interested in my podcast. You never know who you're going to meet. Never know who's going to be on there. And that's actually led to a resurgence on my Twitter account. I was down below 9,000 on Twitter, and I think I'm back up to 9,900 of doing people like that. Like there's some of these podcast platforms that have Facebook pages, so you can see a lot of podcasters that follow in line. But yeah, I think I've got my back up to 9,865 is how many followers I have. It was down just south of 9. So that's added almost 1,000 followers on my Twitter account just in the last, like literally since the holidays. You can do the same thing on Instagram, see what keywords work well best for you, and see people who's using that. And while you're sitting at home or on the couch, that's one of the things that I like to do. Stuff's like, you're going to ruin your eyes. And that's probably why I have to get glasses now, because that's what I did a lot during the holidays. Okay. 60. If you want to do some stuff, use some YouTube advertising videos. I've started seeing this popping up more on some of my pages and my YouTube videos. And I've reached out to YouTube, and we'll be doing some advertising, looking for people that have podcast videos that I can advertise on in front of as well. Okay. 61 is you may want to do a throwback video if you're using video. Is Restream will allow for you to restream the videos. You can restream and make it look like live and come on a scheduled time, but you can also set it up to repost it, redo it again at a later time, or repeat it every hour or 2 hours for a while if you need to. Like I said, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. I know I'm missing one on there, but there's a whole like 30, 40 different platforms that you can restream to. Some aren't appropriate for what you're doing. Some are like gaming channels or things like that. But Restream is a really cool thing that I use on a daily basis. Once I get the video back in from my VA on Fiverr, I'll upload it to Restream and then schedule it for the next day or later in the afternoon to go live. If you've got something that's relevant, maybe talk to the local morning show. The show falls in with what news is going on in the area. Maybe you reach out to the news desk. Christine Haas from Media Max Out talked about this on the Mass Media Podcast Summit. And that's why one of the things you want to keep in touch with your local channels can be great ways for you to come on and have 10 seconds or 30 seconds or even a couple minutes, maybe a local morning show if it's falling relevant with what's going in the article. Like if there's somebody doing healthness or especially with all the coronavirus, it's a hot button, cleanliness or health-wise, how to boost your immune system or other things like that. If the housing market starts to crash, you better believe I'll be reaching out to them. Hey, let's talk about options for people and what they can do in negotiations. Same thing on the radio stations. If you got radio stations that fall in line with what you're doing, a lot of them are looking for guests to come on that fall in line. There's obviously a lot on Saturday, Sunday, drive times or other people. Great place for you to reach out to be a potential guest and get out what you're talking about to your audience. And then I know Juliet's we'll say would rather have a quiz, but I like trying to get a survey out to people that opt into my list of some sort after a little bit and just touch base and see where they're at. I may offer, hey, here's some other information. I'll give them the answers, the average answers in my podcast. I won't give them the information. If I'm doing a live event, I'll often give the full information. But I'll ask questions or hot button questions. What's your experience? What are some things you'd like for me to cover? There's a whole variety of things you can ask on a survey to get an idea of their name, their age, their LinkedIn, website, city, state, biggest goals, biggest weakness, how many years they've been doing what they're doing, favorite book quote. If I have vendors, I'll sometimes get my vendors to sponsor that because it's giving them an extra boost. Hey, do you have an IRA? If that's something relevant with our audience. Do you have an LLC, which is something relevant with my audience? Do you have a website? If they say yes, great. If no, then it becomes a lead source for one of my vendors or sponsors. Same thing. How do they listen to the podcast, their niche or industry, their top 3 states to invest in where I'm asking for? Are they looking for partnering up? Are they looking for other events they've attended to, their social medias, their birthday? And then you can customize favorite charity, favorite superhero, some of these things to really get an idea that you can customize that stuff. But all this information becomes such valuable content for what you're doing that you can go back into, especially on questions, biggest needs, biggest weaknesses. That becomes really great content for future episodes. And you could even keep track of that. I've done this past, so-and-so, we had somebody, boom, had a question, what questions like for me to ask? And this works out really well. So this episode is dedicated to you, Gina, on the question you asked on your survey. So if you like my slides to this, I'm glad to send them out to you. I need to tweak them a little bit, but if you go to eventpromotionplan.com, they'll give you my slides from Monday night. If you want my slides, just drop me an email at scott@weclosenotes.com, and I'll be glad to send them to you. But what questions? Woo! We went through a lot in right at an hour and 2 minutes from the time we got started. Can I share an Eventbrite link that shows you what you've posted? Thanks. Do I have one that's current right now? I just did one for the mass. I don't have one that's up right now, David. So what I'll do is I'll create one. I'll create a new one and go there. But just go to Eventbrite and post a new one. It's not that difficult. If you have something you're doing on a regular basis or a regular thing, you can do it and just repeat it and go from there. Okay. But they have the online event thing, which is probably what you, hang on a second. I think I do. I actually think I do. I have one coming up for my note weekend. So let me share it. Let me log on here. Because I'm doing a 1-day kind of mini summit for my coaching stuff. Let's see here. Manage events. Okay, so let me share my screen so you guys can see. Yes, Octopus CRM costs money. It's not that expensive. They're free ones, not really. If you're going to use LinkedIn, LinkedIn is the free version. All these other softwares have some sort of cost. I think it's like $19 a month or $49 a month, Cassandra. But it's well worth it based on what you get out, as long as you're using it. If you're not using it, then don't pay for it. But often, I think it has a trial, like a 7-day trial period as well too. Like you can try that out, but mess around with it and you'll love it. Okay. What am I trying to do? I'm trying to share my screen. Hang on here. Share my screen. Okay, so Eventbrite. All right. So here's events. If I go to my pages, hang on, I gotta move this out of the way. Manage events. So I have these 3 events. Like I have this repeated. So I said it once, and it's an online event. 100 people on it. I did this about a week ago. You know, I'm selling tickets to this. So I just post it there. I haven't anybody sign up for it, but what you see is a lot of people will sign up for online events the week of the event. So I'm expecting a lot more traffic this next week. But it literally just simple, just I set this up and it's on there on a regular basis. Come on here. Here we go. So it's basically that $100 for the one day. It's a description. Check out the full schedule. I give them a discount code if they email me. And it's just a simple thing, a little bit. You want your image to be a description of what it is because that's what they're going to see first and foremost, but not too overly at the top. Okay? This is the online event for my one-day mini summit. You can go on, like I said, I've done it for Note Night in America before, and I need to redo it, like I said. For my Monday night webinar that I do, I probably need to set one up just for this too, now that I think about it. But you can have it set repeat up. I can repeat that for 12 or 17 events if I'm going to do it for 17 events. So it's a very simple thing, just to, hey, when does it start? When does it end? Okay. That's for an online event, but you could do an episode. If you're going to have an episode released, hey, or you're going to, I would say it would work best if you're going to record, and maybe you want people to join in and record and live from there. But that gives something an opportunity there. It's free to do. You could set it up once and it's done for 17 weeks or 17 events for you. Okay. My podcast is called Clean Beauty. Would you want to do an ad or show swap? I'd love to be a guest on your show. I have an upcoming event. Would love to share these tips. Thanks. Cassandra, let's talk some more. I don't know if you're a fit for my audience, so it wouldn't be good. And I may not be a fit for your audience. So doing a show swap may not make sense. Okay. All right. But we could talk. You can use these tips. Use these for your events. If you've got an event going on, Cassandra, by all means, go right ahead. That's why the whole reason we're using this. Okay. What other questions, comments, concerns do you have? It's good to see Becky, Cassandra, David, Desi. What's up, buddy? George, Gerald, Nadia, Patty, Lily, Ray, Juliet was on here earlier. What questions do you have for your stuff? How many of you guys that are on here have a podcast out that you're doing right now? Or let's do this. How many of you don't have a podcast? It's probably a smaller list. Nadia has a podcast. Okay. If you've got a podcast, tell me what it is. Assertive radiance. What does that mean? About love me back to life. Okay. All right. Cool. I imagine that Valentine's Day was a big event. Love me back was maybe something. That's another thing too. If you see events taking place or there's a holiday that can fall in line with you, hey, do that. Like, I'll give you an example. Valentine's Day, if you get a love and romance one. Like my friend Kim Seltzer, who does the, what is her podcast? The Charisma Quotient. She did a big thing. You got Social Media Day coming up in June 30th. If you're in something with social media, digital marketing would be a great one to talk about. International Podcast Day is September 30th. You could do something about that event, okay? We are recording this, and we'll have the replays will be up by tomorrow. We'll send an email out to everybody that registered if you missed it. You can also go to my group, my Facebook group, Syntax Podcasters, and this is live streaming there too. So if you go and join that, you'll be able to watch the replay on there later on tonight, okay? Ray, not yet, okay? Desi Arnaz, you have a podcast? You starting a podcast? Desi was a guest on my podcast last year. A lot of people enjoyed it. Any other questions, comments, concerns, anybody? Before we wrap it up for the evening? Awesome, guys. Well, hey, that will be it then for this episode. Thanks so much for joining. Thanks for asking questions. For those that are live on here, showed up, I'll send the link out to the slides for you guys as well. So as always, guys, we do have our mass media mastermind group. If you're looking for some coaching, some help with solutions, it's $97 a month. Get some one-on-one time with me. I'm glad to jump on the phone, help you walk you through some things. I've helped Julia Clark get booked on about 20 different podcasts. I'm helping David Schreiner with some things. I'm helping Jay Helms. He's doing a live event to help them out. Him. Brett Swartz, who's also a podcaster. We helped him get booked on a couple spots. And drive in some sponsors as well too. So glad to help out. It's $97 a month for our Mass Media Mastermind. Cancel at any time. And just drop me an email at scott@weekclosenotes.com if you're interested. But glad to have you. Glad to work with you and help out in any way we can for you. But otherwise, have a great day. And we'll see you guys all at the top. Bye.